Another episode of Personality Picks. You thought we were going to miss this. Yeah, as always, I stuck with intros, so you guys have to get used to this. But thanks for joining us again. This is episode 4, and we have another great guest today. It's our man, Daniel Levy from Best Fight Picks. Daniel, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you having me on. This was cool. You told me you were doing something a little bit different, so I was really excited to come on here and talk with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just wanted to get get away from all the. All right, I've seen way too many people have shows about picks about fights, and I want to get to know the other side, the actual like real life human being person of the capper. So I thought it was a cool concept.
Absolutely, definitely is. I'm excited to hear these questions. I purposely didn't watch any of the other episodes because I wanted to come in here like unprepared, like just give you authentic answers and like just go with the flow in the moment. So I'm excited, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's get this started. So, first question for me is what got you into MMA? Like, have you ever? I know you've trained before, but what is the first thing that caught your eye about MMA? Was it a specific show, specific promotion?
I mean, I've always been into sports, and I've played sports my whole life. Baseball, soccer, hockey. But I guess when I was a teen, I saw the UFC for the first time and I was like, holy shit, like this stuff is ridiculous. It's brutal, it's competitive, and we would just watch this show called UFC Unleashed after school and just think that, see the guys like Forrest Griffin and Rampage and Chuck, Clay Guida, Nate Diaz, all these guys, and just think that this was like the most badass shit ever. And, we'd be idiots and throw on the gloves and, go to the backyard, buy mats and just do all kinds of stupid shit. And then eventually you become a hardcore fan. That's when we were casual fans, but then you start watching every week and you become a hardcore fan. And I guess we'll talk about the betting side of things soon, but eventually I wanted to be like, well, if I watch it every weekend, I might as well get paid to watch it somehow. So yeah, it all kind of snowballed.
Yeah, and see, a lot of people that have been on the show came from the background of like watching WWE, and then they found out it was fake. Well, at least that was it for me. And there was something about that moment when I found out WWE was fake and it was staged, where I was just really disappointed and I wanted something that was real. And that's where I turned my head and I found the UFC. So that's how it was for me at least. Just the aspect of the violence, the technique behind all these different moves and sweeps and grappling techniques. I love it all. I'm like a fanatic, a geek about it. Like I'm the analytic side.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, like even growing up, my dad was really into martial arts. He got a karate black belt and he'd always like want me to watch like the Steven Seagal movies and shit like that. But I was always thinking like, man, like, this Aikido stuff, it looks cool on film, but I'm not exactly sure it would work in real life. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone's martial art, but I did karate as a kid and it just wasn't for me, man. I didn't really like it that much. But around the time when I was 16, I started doing like no gi grappling and I fucking loved it, man. Like I just loved it. And it's funny because back then I had a complex towards the gi. I always thought that like, man, I ain't gonna be caught dead rolling around in my pajamas, because I had like that whole thing about like I guess I associated it when I took karate. I thought that, you know, I ain't putting on the uniform ever again. But fast forward to like 2017, I started wearing the gi consistently and fell in love with it. Now I'm actually a purple belt and I train like Monday through Saturday. Like I'm just in love with jujitsu.
Yeah, and that was the complex for me. Is like I thought gi grappling was just not as useful as no gi grappling until I started training this past week in the gi, and I'm like, oh my god! Like yesterday, yesterday was my
Yeah.
first fully what's the word I'm looking for? It was a day where I did good, and I was proud. So it takes a lot for someone to crack out of that shell, especially when it's a new martial art or a different form they're not used to. Um, it takes a lot.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%, 100%. And honestly, like I hear all the comparisons about what's better, gi or no gi. I think they're both great for different reasons, man. I think that it's hard to just pick one. But what I ultimately have like come to the conclusion to is that they both complement each other and they both help the other one. Like no gi helps my gi game and gi helps my no gi game. So I do them both. And yeah, but as long as you're learning jujitsu, you're on the right path. But as far as the getting your ass kicked in the gym thing, that means that you're training with the right people, man. Because I mean, if you were the top dog all the time, I personally wouldn't feel satisfied. I'd rather go to the tournament and be the top dog than be the top dog at the gym. Every once in a while, okay, but like for the most part, my training partners like whoop my ass, dude. Like they're so much better than me, and they're more athletically gifted. They're more technical. So I just gotta be that hard worker, be that gritty guy that shows up every day. That you know, man, maybe I'm not as athletically gifted as this guy, but maybe I can outwork him, and then one day, be able to tap him out, or survive some bad positions and get him tired and break him down the stretch, something like that. So I've just found different ways to make it work. I've always been into chess since I was a kid, and that's always about like finding solutions, right? So jujitsu is about finding solutions as well. And that just applies to every area of your life. Like I hate school, but I had to find a solution. I had to find a way to graduate college somehow. So just all this shit applies to everything. It's just all about finding solutions, and you can apply that to any area of your life.
Yeah, and going back to how you were talking about being the top dog in the gym, striking has always come natural to me and my friends, just in general. And when we were in the gyms, we were like the three people who were like, okay, we were kind of like up there in the striking department, so it got a little comfortable. And then all three of us made the switch to jujitsu and gi jujitsu specifically, and that's where we were humbled. So I definitely appreciate that. And just going back to the point of being humbled and being like accepting it, because some people don't accept that feeling of defeat in a sense, even though it's like you're not competing in practice. But some people go too hard, and whether it happens in sparring sessions at striking or it goes in when you're rolling, people compete a little too hard. Either they get hurt and they're just like, okay, I'm done with this, or they just lose and they don't continue because they're just discouraged. So finding the comfort in pushing past that is really important, and it was important for me.
100%, man. And I mean, it's always about just getting your ego checked consistently on a daily basis. It's really easy to go in there the first day, get destroyed, and then be discouraged and not come back. But it's that guy that got destroyed that keeps showing up that everybody gains the most respect for, and you gain a lot of respect for yourself. Just by showing up. Like again, these dudes that I'm training with are for the most part always beating my ass. But then you'll have some kid who's trying it out and he's like, man, how can I be a purple belt one day? And I'm like, dude, like, there's no secret here. I just show up every single day. That's all. I take my ass whooping like a man and I keep showing up. So when people ask me, like, what do I need to work on? I'm like, just show up, just practice, just show up. That's it.
Yep, exactly. Now, how long did it take you to get your purple belt?
Well, so I was doing like no gi grappling for a while, but it was kind of like a one-on-one thing. Like one of my buddies is a big athletic dude who was like a state champion wrestler. So me and him just like got like two mats and we would just roll the two of us. And that's just he just kind of showed me like the fundamentals. But it wasn't until, way past that I went to like an actual like martial arts gym, like, put the uniform on, like be in an actual class setting, train under a black belt, like a legitimate black belt.
Huh,
So I've been wearing the gi consistently since 2017.
2017. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a long time.
I've also done Muay Thai as well. My only issue with that, and I love Muay Thai, but my issue was like, dude, I liked sparring way too much.
Hmm.
And like back to the like kind of being unathletic talk. I mean, I say I'm unathletic, but I'm comparing myself to like real athletes, like, right? I take like way too many shots, but like I've got a really good chin. So it's like one of those things where it's like I'm that tough, gritty dude that just gets hit way too much. And you add up the years, and it's like, dude, like I should not be taking this many head strikes. So I was just like, why don't we just put that on the side and start doing jujitsu?
When was the last time you were in that Muay Thai gym?
Well, it's the same gym, but in the Muay Thai class,
Okay.
it's been a while. It's been a few years since I've sparred. for sure. But I was
Okay.
thinking like, dude, maybe I should just go back, do some pads, like, hit the bag, do some, you know, training drills and shit like that just to keep it sharp. But I've just like been all in on the jujitsu journey.
There you go. Yeah, I took a pause at a point when I was younger because I've been strictly Muay Thai kickboxing from when I was like 17, no, 16, all the way until 20. And then I stopped for 4 years. God knows why. Like I just was more focused on school. And then I just started hitting the bag after each workout, like just local gym. And that's where the love for it came back. And I was like, okay, I need to start actually taking this seriously for a second. But then I saw jujitsu and I was tempted, so I had to dabble in both. I started with jujitsu before I went back into the Muay Thai and kickboxing classes, and I just always found myself peeking over at that kickboxing class. Like, okay, I need to go back there first. The cardio itself was, and it was nuts. I couldn't handle it the first day in jujitsu when I was rolling no gi. Uh, so I think that's what initially discouraged me, and then went to kickboxing. Cardio is a little bit better now, and I feel a lot more comfortable per se. Because nothing's worse than having someone on top of you, and you're out of breath, and you're like trying to get off or sweep, and it's just not working out because you have no energy.
Yeah, being tired in both of them suck, like completely. Because I mean, like in Muay Thai, your arms are heavy, but so you start dropping your hands, you start taking more shots, but you don't want to like give up or take a knee. You want to like stay in there, so you got to circle out, but you're too tired to circle out. And then in jujitsu, once you learn how to really defend yourself, you can kind of stall in bad positions. This is I'm talking like worst case scenario if you're gassed out and you just like you got nothing left, but you don't want to get submitted. There's ways to do that. Obviously, in the tournaments, you don't want to do any shit like that.
Yeah,
But in the practice room, you can learn different ways how to stall. And once your defense gets better, you might find yourself hanging out in some bad positions. But yeah, I feel you, man. Just the cardio for both is completely different, and it just requires reps.
it is. No, 100%. Now, going back to like the Twitter side of things, like what made you start your page, Half the Battle podcast, and your personal Twitter page? What got you to take that first step?
Yeah, so as far as the betting side of things, one of my buddies, he's just a ridiculous like genius better. Like we went to high school together, and he like when we were teens, this guy was like winning like six figures in poker tournaments, and eventually that turned into him running his own book, and then he became like the face of like sports betting in Georgia. And now he's like traveling all over the world doing all kinds of crazy shit. I even posted like a picture on Twitter once, like my buddy played against Colby Covington in a poker tournament. That's him. And I did a podcast with him too a few years back. It's pinned on my profile on Twitter, so you can just hear him talk. And when you hear him talk, like you don't need to hear me talk about him, you just need to hear him talk. It's like ridiculous. So just being around a guy like that from such an early age really just opened the doors for me and kind of like just showed me what to do and what not to do. And even in saying that, you're still going to make mistakes because it's still gambling at the end of the day, right?
Yep,
But if you can even create any kind of edge for yourself, hopefully over the long run, you can get positive results. Because this game will take a lot out of you. This game will really test you. You see it all the time. You see guys come in here, they go on one hot streak, and as soon as shit goes down south, they delete their records. They come back as a different name. They do the whole bit. So I actually do truly believe in the long term game, and I know that's like easy. That's a lot of people just throw that out there. Oh, long term game, this and that, and they even say that to brush off L's. But like, if you see the year I had last year, I had a terrible year last year, but I'm still here this year, right? Like so, and I had a couple average years in between. Then I had some really good years a few years back. I'm having a good year this year, so you just got to understand that gambling, there's going to be ups and downs, but if you can consistently, beat the closing line, if your money management's on point, your discipline's on point, you're not, you have a losing night, then you don't go out there and do a 10-team parlay with a different sport and just start being a total degenerate, then chances are you might be on the right side of the coin, long term, which is at the end of the day what I plan to do. So as far as the Twitter stuff, I mean, I think it's going to be So I guess back to my buddy, we'd be going to like the casinos in Biloxi and I'd be watching him like play poker and just like have my mind blown by like him like being like this like 18 to 21-year-old kid in there with grown ass men, like, taking them for everything, right? And we went to Vegas one time for my first ever UFC event. It was UFC 136. It was the night that Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard had their trilogy.
Hmm.
The night that Frankie knocked out Gray Maynard. And so we went to that. And then a week later, we went to UFC 137 when BJ Penn fought Nick Diaz.
Yes.
So we called up one of the casinos. I think it might have been MGM for when we were at the Houston event, the 136. And like we did like a degenerate parlay on every single bet, every single fight on the card. Like dude, like let's throw $10, pick every single, who you think is gonna win each fight, and do like a 10 to 12 team parlay. So we were doing some stupid shit like that. And obviously I saw right away, okay, that's not going to work. You might get lucky here and there, but that's not going to work long term. But here in Atlanta, where I'm from, prior to like, right now I do a lot of work in real estate and stuff like that. But prior to that, I was like a studio musician playing the drums. So I was playing at some club in Atlanta, and in the downstairs, like in the bar area, they had like a TV on, and they were showing the UFC on Fox, and it had Nate Diaz versus Jim Miller. So I called up my buddy, the one I'm talking about, and I was like, hey, let me place a bet on Nate Diaz plus 220 against Jim Miller. So that cashes. And then I go upstairs and have the best show of my life. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I can like bet these underdogs that are like being counted out and, potentially do well long term doing that, risk the same amount on each one and see what happens over a large sample size. So that's kind of what I started doing. And I guess around 2014, I didn't even know about what third party tracking was or this or that. I was just kind of just betting for myself, which I still do bet for myself. But now, the third party trackers are great because they hold you accountable. They let you see like what your strengths and weaknesses are. I love the bet MMA tips because you can see like your history betting on each fighter, on each odds range, on each weight class, on like everything. So it really broke it down for me. Um, but I basically around 2014 started betting every single event, right?
Hmm.
And then after that, I don't know how I got on Twitter, but I somehow got on Twitter and I started following a bunch of cappers. And I was like, okay, so this is what they're doing. They're posting their plays, they're doing all these things. I was like, that's cool. I could do that because I thought that like, I've got knowledge of the sport because I'm involved in, training as well. And then eventually I'd start like posting my plays every week, doing all these things, made a website, all that. And then I had like 3 years of double digit wins. And I thought that the right move at the time would be to go tout and sell my plays. And it was interesting because at the time, like I had like the best intentions possible. I thought that like this is the right move to make. I've earned this spot. Like I'm not just coming out here with no track record doing it. I've had 3 double digit winning years. Let's do this. And
Hmm.
it was a completely different game, man. It like basically killed my spirit because it wasn't anymore about doing it for me. Now I'm like starting to do it for other people. Now people are messaging me like, oh, why haven't you bet anything yet? Or, like, oh, only 2 bets on this card or this or that. And then you start playing it safe. And then you start getting away from what got you to the dance, which is my underdogs. So I had like a couple really average years where I still ended in the green, but like they weren't like my double digit winning years that I had done prior. So, and then I had my really shitty year last year, and I was like, all right, bro, I'm done with this shit because this is totally killing my process. I don't enjoy it. I'd go to bed stressed. I'd wake up stressed. And I was just like, fuck this. This took out all the fun. I don't need the fucking money. Like, I'm doing good for myself in other areas. Like, I don't need this shit. So now this year, I just went back to just betting like I used to bet, and I'm up like 40 units on the year. So I've been really, really happy with it. And more importantly than that, I have like a 30% ROI on the year, which is like we're in
Huge.
September now. Like it's not like we're in like January, we're in September. So that's pretty fucking good. So
Hmm.
it's just about, now I don't have to worry about, people paying me and me feeling bad. Like, cause I care so much. Like you're giving me your money. So I have to give it my all. But in doing that, it's like the double-edged sword of, oh, but I don't want to take this risk and lose on this underdog. But now I don't care. I'll take that risk on that Nate Landwehr plus 275. You know, I'll take that risk on that Jeff Neal plus 150 or whatever. So I'm just back to betting like how I used to bet. And yeah, there's going to be losing nights, of course. It's still gambling. The last one was a L, but that's okay. As long as in the long term, the long run, you're doing well, that's what counts. And I'm sticking to my process. I'm not about to just completely change shit up because I had a L last week, right? Like I'm still sticking to my process.
And you answered the next question and the one right after it in that. So, dude, that was great. And just to touch up on that a little bit more, it's a lot of people are scared of betting underdogs at times just because they see that plus sign. And I bet you if they see you post that same underdog but with a minus sign in front of the number, they'll be more confident in betting it. It's a psychological game that people can't get past, and especially like with people like you, like Clint, Liam, that do bet these underdogs pretty often. It's plus 220. Do I really want to do this? I'm scared. It's that same mental battle that people have, and they just can't get around it.
My mental battles with the favorites. It's like, oh, there's a minus 220 favorite. Shit, I don't know. Like, because I need all my bases covered. You know, I had a funny saying, like, don't bet chalk unless it's a lock. But like, I know that sounds funny and it rhymes and all this shit. And, you know, you get burnt a lot, like that kid Zell Huber last week. So let's talk about that for a second. So Zell Huber, you watch all the tape on him, and he's this destroyer, man. He's this fucking badass phenom kid. And he goes out there in his last fight. Now, what do I take away from that? What I personally took away from that was not that I capped the fight wrong. What I took, because if he would have given it 100% and lost, then it would have been like, you know what? Props to Ogden. But this is not even props to Ogden. This is props to those UFC debut jitters. Because if you watch a fight between Tyler Santos and Mara Romero Barella, it was literally the exact same thing. Tyler Santos is 100 times more talented than Barella, but for whatever reason in her debut, she didn't let her hands go. She was just off. Just she stared at her opponent. Like I literally watched this kid Zell Huber throw like over 100 significant strikes one fight prior, dominate every single person he fought prior to that. And then goes into his UFC debut and doesn't pull the trigger. Same thing that happened to Tyler Santos. So what I'm thinking now is one mistake I made with the Tyler Santos situation was I bet her at like minus 149 against Barella. And trust me, if they ever fought again and I got minus 149, you know I'm betting that all fucking day, right, on Tyler Santos. But I let my emotions get in the way. So her next fight against Molly McCann, I'm like, oh, Tyler Santos is a fraud and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'm disrespecting her when I should have just been like, you know what? She just had an off night. So this time I'm not going to make that mistake. So now when everybody shits on Zell Huber his next fight and we get a really fucking good number on him and he actually fights this time, it's going to like be one of those hindsight things that, hey, he just had an off night. He's just a 23-year-old kid that was, you know, just kind of the lights were a little bit too bright for him in that debut. And I still think that, like, I still believe in my reads from his prior fights that this kid's actually talented. He just fucking shat his pants that night, you know? So I think he's going to come out better.
Yeah, no, 100%. People are quick to go against their own pick. Like they'll be really confident the day before and like, yeah, this guy's gonna ragdoll him, and he does nothing like Zell Huber did. And I was on that side too. And you already see these people like, oh, he's the biggest fade, or
He's
the biggest
definitely not, dude.
bust.
Dude,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, like
he's
that
talented.
fight wasn't even Ogden doing anything special. Like Ogden, I'm gonna fade Ogden his next fight too. Like Ogden literally just threw two punches and Zellhuber threw zero. That's literally what that was. So yeah, it was what it was. But I just expect that next time, you know, he'll have this experience under his belt and he'll actually perform. And that's the bottom line because it's not like we watch the tape and he didn't throw 100 significant strikes against Lucas Almeida. It's not like we watched the tape and he didn't have all those first round finishes. And it's not like he wasn't super aggressive. He was super aggressive. He did land over 100 significant strikes on Lucas and weather a serious storm in the early going and fight like a true Mexican warrior. This last time, I don't know what the fuck that was. That was just,
Yep.
you know, the moment got to him.
And you know what? If a lot of these betters, and you probably know this, I bet a lot of different markets, but the one market that a lot of people tend to have overreaction on is tennis. Believe it or not, you'd come out one day, you're betting on this tennis player, and they just shit the bed. They look like they don't even know how to play, and people come quickly to the conclusion that, okay, their next match they're just gonna go balls to the wall against them pretty much, and they get burned. It happens so often, and it's like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. It's the mental aspect, if they're actually ready, if they're 100% physically fit. A lot of that comes into factor. And with UFC, it's a little bit more difficult to see that because they fight once every 3 4 months, if that. So you can't really get a read on these fighters. So that's why a lot of people do dig. Oh my god, I stumbled there. They dive into their Instagrams and their Twitters and social medias just see how they look in training or if they actually have been training pretty hard or not. So that's the one market I can relate it to the most when it comes to, oh, I'm gonna automatically fade that person next time.
Yeah, and kind of like what we were talking about off air when you asked me how I think the Braves are going to do. I think that relates to this conversation. Dude, the Braves like sport, this is just sports in general, man. People are going to have off nights and they're going to have on nights. For example, the last time we played against the Mets, who were like head to head for first place with in our division, we had a 4-game series. We beat them 3 out of 4 games, right? But then we just lost the game to the last place team, the Nationals. Like, so it's like anything can happen on any given night. It's just about what's going to happen over the long run. And then back to the underdog talk. It's not even about seeing a plus money sign next to it that makes me nervous. Seeing a minus money sign makes me nervous, but it's not even that either. People talk about, oh, I'm taking a value bet on this guy. And I'm thinking to myself, every bet should be a value bet, favorite or dog. It's about where you line them. If they're a minus 150 favorite, but you line them a minus 250 favorite, there's value on that minus 150. And subsequently, if, let's say that someone is minus 150 and you line them plus 150, well, there's no value there, so you shouldn't take them at that spot. So there's value on favorites and dogs. So I don't like it when, or it's not that I don't like it, I just disagree with people who are like, yeah, I'm taking a value bet on this guy. It's like, dude, you should find value in every single bet that you make, and you're not going to be right all the time. Like, yeah, I was wrong last week. There wasn't any value on Zellhuber. Ogden was the right side on that night. Now, if they ran it back, I'd probably still take Zellhuber. Now that might just be me being stubborn. But I'm pretty convicted in my belief that it was a Tyler Santos Barella situation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the kid's a total fraud, but I'm not ready to write him off yet, because I wrote off Tyler Santos completely in that same exact situation.
Mm-hmm.
And she proved me that my initial reads on her were the correct ones. Like, I bet on her against Barella because I thought it was a mismatch. And in that fight, it's not like Barella did anything special. It's just that Tyler Santos literally didn't fight, just like Zellhuber literally didn't fight. But another thing I want to talk to you about, dude, is there's a lot of groupthink on MMA Twitter. Like, a lot of people, they love it when everybody's on the same side as them. I fucking hate it when everybody's on the same side as me. I like being on the opposite side of people. I liked it when everybody's questioning that Nate Landwehr against Onama pick. I like it when everybody's questioning that Jeff Neal against Vicente Luque, that Bilal Muhammad against Vicente Luque. Like, I love those spots. Like, I don't like being on the same side as everyone. That always scares me. Always fucking scares me. And people find comfort in being on the same side as everyone. I find discomfort in it.
Yeah. The scenario that comes to mind for me is the Hermanson and Chris Curtis fight. That fight
Yes, good
specifically,
example.
I felt like I was the only one on Hermanson, and every single person I spoke to was like, "Yeah, but Chris Curtis this and Chris Curtis that." So, if personally, like, just being 100% honest, if I didn't lock in that Hermanson bet, maybe I would have stayed off. Not saying I would have taken Chris Curtis, but maybe I would have just shied away and not bet the side at all. Luckily, I did, and I stuck to my conviction. But yeah, a lot of people like to ride the wave. They see multiple people on the same side. All right, we're riding the wave. We're going balls deep with these 4 guys that are on whichever fighter, just because they said so. No one can tell the future. That's it.
100%. Like, if I could give anyone advice, minus the money management, the discipline, all that kind of stuff, which, should go without saying, is to trust your own read. Fuck what Daniel Levy says, fuck what Wiz says,
Yeah.
fuck what any of these other guys say. Like, listen, if you want to listen to me for like entertainment value, or maybe I cover like an angle that you hadn't heard of before, or whatever the case may be, that's completely fine. But at the end of the day, I'm not placing the bet for you. You're placing the bet for yourself. And likewise, you're not placing the bets for me. I'm placing them for myself. So, when people are blaming me for, oh, busting their parlay, like, dude, I didn't bust your parlay. I gave you the reasons why I was betting this kid, but I didn't tell you to parlay him. I played him straight. I didn't tell you anything what to do. I just told you where my head's at. You got to make your own decisions at the end of the day. Like, again, it's your money and it's my money, right? Like, I'm not letting you bet for me, and you're not going to let me bet for you. So you got to make your own decisions. But it's okay to listen to other people. I personally try not to listen to that many people, because not that it clouds my judgment, it really doesn't. Like, I'm pretty strong minded, and but I just try to focus on myself, just try to be in tune with what I think is going to happen, because you'll see so many like convicted opinions on Twitter, like, this guy's a fraud, this is the fate of the week, this is the that, this is that this, and it's easy to be swayed off something that you feel strongly about. And you should never let anybody talk you off of something when you've put in the work, when you truly believe something, when you feel like there's value on the line, when you're like, dude, I can't believe I'm getting him at this price. And they might be like, oh, I can't believe I'm getting the opposite side at this price. Fuck that. You got to go with what you think. And again, it doesn't matter if I'm saying the opposite thing as you. It doesn't matter if some other person you hold in high regard is saying the opposite. You got to go with what you think, period.
Exactly. Exactly. And just pulling this up on the screen. Thoughts on the recent Feely decision versus the Tyler versus Chev fight? Feely, that decision was just, it was correct. That's all I'm gonna say. That was the correct decision, and I'm not biased at all. It's just coming from someone that watched the fight through and through. Uh, Feely won that fight. That third round, punches off your back like this is not going to get you like that much attention or points from the judges. And then Tyler Santos versus Shevchenko, in my opinion, I think Tyler won. I know some people have the argument of you have to bring it to the champ, you have to show that you beat the champ. I get that, and I think she did, but that one's a little bit closer. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, the whole to be the champ, you got to beat the champ shit. It's fun to say, but like, you got to take it round by round, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, you're scoring a fight. You're not scoring. This isn't like in Pride where like they'd score the fight as a whole, right? This is where you're scoring it round by round, 10-point must system, which, whether I agree with that system or not, that's what we're working with, round by round. So you look at a fight like between Johnny Hendricks and GSP, right?
Mhm.
And that was considered a very controversial fight at the time. And part of it being, let me say this too, is that when you have a long reigning champion and someone actually gives them a tiny bit of adversity, people overblow that shit. Like, people are saying that the first Gustafsson Jones fight was a robbery. No, it wasn't. Like, just because Gustafsson actually put up more of a fight than anyone else did does not mean he won that fight. So back to Hendricks and GSP. So off the top of my head, I think GSP won 1, 3, and 5. Hendricks won 2 and 4. But
Yep.
the rounds that Hendricks won, he landed more damage. He wobbled GSP. He did all these things, but he still only won the second and fourth round. Whereas GSP barely squeaked out 1, 3, and 5, but that's still 3-2. That's still 48-47, and there were no 10-8s. So I get it. In the 2 rounds that Johnny Hendricks won, he landed more damage, but he only won 2 of 5 rounds, and none of them were 10-8s. So that's 48-47 GSP. The Feely fight, dude, I fucking bet Algio at dog money. And look, um, I'm not one of these guys that, for the most part, that like loses a bet and is like, oh, but I was on the value side. Like, you see these guys, they bet on someone that gets knocked out in the first round. They're like, oh, I was on the value side. But long term, I will say this: on split decision type fights, I would prefer to be on the underdog than the favorite, which I was in this spot. However, as an Algio better, I scored that fight for Feely. I definitely scored that fight for Feely, let alone the third round. As someone who grapples, like, I'd much rather be the person on someone's back about to choke them out than be the person that's almost being choked out and trying to resort to a couple hammer punches. Not saying that they were pleasant. I doubt they were pleasant, but you're not winning the round. Like if he was actually damaging Feely and then maybe turned into his guard, start landing some bows, and was able to override the early success of Feely in that round. Okay, that's one thing, but that's not what happened, man. It was kind of desperation because he couldn't get out of a dominant position. One of the most dominant position, I'd say, the most dominant position is a back take when you're face down, ass up. That's the worst position you can be in. But the back take he was in is pretty fucking bad. I'd say it's right up there with being full mounted.
Yep, exactly, exactly. I agree with all those points, and that's the one thing about betting Twitter where it's people always flex the, oh, but I was on the value side. Well,
Like, yeah,
that's
you notice, and not trying to toot my horn, but just talking more about like my mindset. Whenever I lose a bet, you never fucking see me writing paragraphs. You never fucking see me cry. You just see me write minus whatever. Props to the other guy. Boom, on to the next. And that's it, bro. Like, because I see these motherfuckers write whole paragraphs and be like, oh, but he was minus 400 live on the live line going into that. It's like, dude, like stop making excuses. Just learn from your mistakes. Don't be bitter, be better, and just move on, right? And go on to the next one. That's all it is, because you can't just be hung up on one bet. You got to be hung up on the whole sample size. So yeah.
exactly, exactly. Well said. Do you have a favorite fighter and a favorite fight that you've ever watched? You enjoy watching a specific fighter. It could be multiple if you want.
Shit. It's a
It's
lot
like
of I'll tell you some of my favorite fights. I used to have them written down. But Leonard Garcia versus Korean Zombie, the first one in the WEC. I mean, like when I introduce friends that have never seen this sport to the sport, that's the fight I show them. Like,
mhm,
because when you got your friends that walk into the room and the guys are just laying on each other, and like when I'm watching by myself, they're standing and banging, but when my friends walk in, that's when it's like in a 69 position. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, this is that shit you watch, dude. Yeah. But when I want to introduce someone to the sport, I'll show them Leonard Garcia versus Korean Zombie, WEC 48, I believe it was. And then Randy Couture versus Nogueira. That's a fucking classic. You can put on any Dustin Poirier fight, and that'll do the trick. I mean, Dustin Poirier, if you want to see an ass whooping, you put on Dustin Poirier's UFC debut against Josh Grisby. Because at the time, bro, Josh Grisby, he was in the WEC and he just ran through everybody, like just destroyed every single opponent he had. And he got lined up to fight Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo had to pull out the fight. So they gave him this UFC newcomer named Dustin Poirier, who no one knew about, right? And Dustin Poirier beat him like he owed something. And Josh Grisby was never the same ever again. So if you want to watch an ass whooping, that's one. But then I like Dustin Poirier versus Korean Zombie. I mean, Korean Zombie versus Yair Rodriguez. Like it's just like those guys have like a round table of classic fights that
yep.
you can always go back to. And I could really sit here forever and talk about all these amazing fights. I think the Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz one fight, they had three fights, but the first one, the one that ended in no contest, was an insane fight, dude. And then someone here in the comments asked about ADCC. If you want to see a little like dark horse type fight that no one, I doubt any of y'all seen this fight. Not trying to like act like, oh, I've seen it and you haven't, but I'm just saying, like, if y'all want to see this cool badass fight that I doubt too many people know about, check out Rusimar Palhares versus Lucio Linares. Like these dudes are just trading leg lock attempts back and forth, just crazy scrambles. So that's a really badass fight. Yeah, and there's just so many, man. And most recently, I fucking love that Yuri Prohaska Glover fight. That was just
Oh,
a
that's
dog
a
fight.
classic.
They were dead tired like right away, and they were just showed their heart, their grit, and the outcome. I mean, to if you would have told me beforehand, I mean, I even said on my show, like I was like, there's no way that that Jiri is gonna submit Glover, right? And my friend Brett Apley was on the show with me, and he's actually one of the guys I really respect in this industry.
Mhm.
I fucking value his opinion a lot. Like not enough to sway my opinion on things, but like he's a guy that I hold in super high regard. I don't let anybody sway me because I gotta just do what I believe internally. But like I think Brett Apley his process, the way he looks at things, like I think that he's bar none. You know, I think he's one of the top. But anyways, on the show we did together, I was like, but dude, there's no way that Jiri's gonna submit him. And Brett's like, you never know, and he's right, we never know, anything can happen. So yeah, those are a few fights.
Let alone with 20 seconds left. Like, man, I was surprised myself because he had openings earlier in the fight, but Glover just defended him pretty well. See, that's one of the fights that I would show people, but the one that stands out to me is uh, Joanna and Weili Zhang, the first fight. And I've shown friends that have never watched the UFC this fight before, and once they see two girls on the screen, they're like, "Really? Wait, it's two girls?" I'm like, "Just trust me, you're gonna love this." And every single time, it never fails. Their reaction at the end of the fight is just like, "What the fuck just happened?" And they see the big swelling on Joanna's head and all of the pure action throughout the whole fight. They didn't stop. That's my favorite fight personally, at least from the women's side. But yeah, all of those are great fights. I actually need to go back and watch that ADCC match that you were referring to because I did not see it myself, and I watched a couple of them, specifically the the championship fight. You can't miss that one. That was ridiculous. Gordon Ryan's an absolute legend, and he might for some reason I thought he was like in his late 30s. The guy turns out he's like 27.
Dude, I was talking to my professor about that today because he actually went to the ADCC fights. He actually gave me the honor to teach for him while he was gone, which was like to have a black belt ask me to teach his class for him. I was like insane. I taught the class the difference between the Darstroke and the Anaconda because people always confuse that. And there's a clear difference between the two. So I had to clear that up for them. But yeah, so we were talking about this and I was like, dude, like, there's no way Gordon Ryan's only 29. Like he's got like a gray beard. And my professor was like, he actually bleaches it blonde now. And now these other motherfuckers are out here bleaching their beards and their hair blonde. And then another thing is this is pretty funny. So there was like 10,000 people in that arena, right? And my
Mhm.
professor, he took like two of his students with him. And the Uber situation was about to be crazy, right? Afterwards, everybody's going to be piling on for Uber. So Gordon Ryan takes Andre Galvo's back, and there's like 13 minutes left on the clock. And my professor tells like my two teammates, he's like, dude, this shit's over. Let's order the Uber now. And it was over right then and there. So they got out on time.
That's funny. He knew.
Yeah, he knew right away. I mean, Gordon Ryan on your back with 13 minutes left, dude. And like that choke he got, it's not a traditional Mata Leon rear naked choke. Like traditionally speaking, with the Mata Leon, obviously, you're connecting the hand to the bicep, getting the
Mhm.
hand on the back of the head, blah, blah, blah. This dude, like, it was literally just like this little blade right here grabbed onto his own gi, and he lifted his head above the head of Andre Galvo, and it was just like it's just some different shit that this guy brings to the table,
Mhm.
man, and it's pretty fascinating to watch. And now you're seeing the memes of like Gordon Ryan versus a gorilla because there's no options left, so it's pretty cool to see what this guy's accomplished, and just to like bring a lot of like prominence to grappling. So it's funny because like, I personally don't really enjoy watching grappling that much. I mean, I can watch it in spurts, but like motherfuckers were at that event for 8 hours straight, dude. Like I would have had enough. But I love grappling though. Like I told you, Monday through Saturday, I'm in the gym grappling, right? And I fucking absolutely love it. But watching it, I'd much rather watch MMA. But yeah, this dude Gordon Ryan is doing like to pack out an arena with 10,000 people for jujitsu. Like that's like I'm happy for the community, you
Mhm.
know. And if other people enjoy watching it, that's all that matters.
100%, 100%. And like part of me has always thought like, okay, do I think this guy would ever make a transition into MMA? And sadly, the answer is no because he already has the fame. That's the one
Yeah.
thing. If Gordon Ryan didn't have the notoriety and the fame, I would have thought there was a possibility. But he's made it.
Yeah,
That's
he doesn't need to do that. And if he did, take a couple easy fights, leg lock them real quick, and just to say you did it and be on your way.
it's a similar situation to Bo Nickel, but Bo Nickel He's
He
known,
want he
but
wants Adesanya. This guy, he wants to take it there. He doesn't just want a couple cans. And he's fighting like a regional champ in his next fight. I think the kid's like 7-1. So not saying that Bo Nickel's gonna lose, but I'm just saying like at least he's not, when you talk about dudes in their like second or third pro fight, they're fighting guys that are 1-3, guys that are 4-5, guys that are 0-5, right? This dude's at least fighting a 7-1 guy who's a regional champ in his like second or third pro fight. So it's
mhm,
admirable. I get it. He's a minus 1,500 favorite, but still, like for your third pro fight, you don't see guys going out there fighting 7-1 guys. So it's admirable.
100%. And I wasn't aware of this, but apparently Gordon's signed to one. I have to look into that, but that's interesting. Who knows? But yeah, man. Dan, it was a pleasure having you on. I don't want to keep you for too long. This was
Dude, I'm good, man. I'm enjoying talking to you. So if you got anything else for me, man, I'm here for at least the next. We can go to the top of the hour if you want, unless you're done.
um, that's all I had questions for you. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have you back on because this is going to be a show that's going to continue going on throughout years. I would say, if
Okay,
as long as I'm
excellent.
here. So there's going to be a lot more that we could talk about. I know you have the game to watch too. So
Oh, true. Thanks for reminding me. That's right.
yeah, I watched like the first inning here and there. It was on like a side screen, but it's still 0-0.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the Braves on one screen, the Yankees on the other screen, because I want to see if Aaron Judge is about to break this record.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be nuts. And the fact that the fan that caught his 60th home run the other day gave him the ball, just he didn't want to keep it. He was like, "Here, have it. You need this." That's crazy. I wouldn't have done that.
I mean, he got assigned bad. He got taken care of. They probably gave him season tickets, but a lot of people were saying like, okay, but like, would you ask for like 10K? Would you, because okay, because let's put it this way, that was his 60th home run. He tied Babe Ruth, right?
Yep.
But now we're talking 61. He's about to tie Roger Maris, who holds the Yankees record, right?
Yep.
So what's going to happen with this ball? This ball is going to be worth a lot more. So it's going to be kind of interesting. And then the next one, when he breaks the record, that's when like, did you see that clip of when how in pro wrestling, who was the guy with the sweet chin music with the sidekick to the face?
Shawn Michaels.
Right. Did you see when that clip where he's like, "I'm sorry, I love you," and then he just fucking goes and kicks
Yeah,
him in the face? Someone was like, this is what I'm gonna do to the poor old lady that catches Aaron Judge's 60-second home run ball. Yeah, it's
that's
terrible but
hilarious.
funny.
Wait, are you a football fan at all? Do you watch football?
Yeah, I like football a lot. I like it better though, like in person. And I'm a hardcore Atlanta sports fan. I know that the Falcons are not the best team in the world, but like what you gotta understand is I'm gonna stick with them, win, lose, draw. They can go 0-17, and I'm still gonna root for them. I'm not gonna root. I'm not a bandwagon fan. I root for my teams: the Braves, the Hawks, the Falcons. Period. So
I get that because I'm a New York Giants fan, and we've been sorry for the past 5 years. And the fact that we're 2-0 is fucking amazing. Nothing beats this feeling until we lose next, but it's still
yeah,
it's still gonna be a positive record.
that's what's up, man. Yeah, the Braves are our hope though for another world championship though.
Yeah, no, and I really think they can do it. I think the biggest threat to you guys is the Astros. As hard as that is for me to say, it's to me. I look at it and they have four aces, man. They have Valdez, Verlander, McCullers, and they have Javier, who are all studs. Other than that, I think you guys are pretty equal. You're like up there with them. So
I mean, we beat them last year for the championship, but I think our biggest threats before we get there, obviously, the last 2 years in the championship series has been us and the Dodgers, right? And not this last time, but the time before that, we got to like game 7 versus them. We had, I think, a 3-1 lead, not in terms of one game, but in terms of the series. And then they came back and won, which was heartbreaking. But then the next year, we beat them in the championship series and got to the World Series. So they've always been one of our biggest rivals. What we really need to do is buckle down and get the Mets into the wild card game and us win the division. That's going to be huge. If we can avoid playing that wild card, because we've already clinched, like in terms of we're going to the playoffs, like that's said and done. It's just right now the Mets and the Braves, they're one game apart, like
Yep.
in the rankings right now. And the Mets have a day off tonight, and the Braves don't. So the Braves can go in. The Braves can tie for first place tonight, and then the last series of the year is us versus the Mets in Atlanta. So it's literally going to come down to the wire. Who's going to get the wild card? Who's going to win the division? So I think that depending on what happens there, the Dodgers are always a tough out. But dude, if we make it to the World Series, these Yankees are always intimidating.
True.
I'm scared of these Yankees always, man. There's something just about those pinstripes. You ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can with
Uh-huh.
Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yeah.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies. But one of the quotes in that movie, I'm gonna fuck it up. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it was something like, "You know why the Yankees always win?" And someone's like, "It's because they got Mickey Mantle." And it's like, nah, it's because they can't keep their eyes off the pinstripes. So it's like there's something intimidating about the presence of the New York Yankees, man. So
Uh-huh.
they're a team I respect, but they're a team that like I find intimidating. You know?
The one thing about the Yankees for me though is they when they're cold because they rely on that home run ball so much. So if the bats are cold and they can't get those home runs, it's gonna be tough.
They
Only
they they've been hot lately.
only as of recently they've been hot at getting like these doubles and just people on base. But for the first 3 months of the season, all I can remember is all right, they just scored like 6 home runs and won the game. That was it.
Right. Whatever it takes, man. Whatever it fucking takes. We just need to take care of these Mets. That's
Mhm.
my. Who's your team, by the way?
Unfortunately for you, it's the Dodgers.
Okay, well, but that's respectable. They're a historic team. Um,
Hometown.
but like it's a different kind of rivalry. It's a respectful rivalry with the Dodgers, whereas with the Mets, it's not respectful. Like the Mets fans are they've got this like little brother complex because the Yankees are big bro, you know what I'm saying? And the Mets haven't won a World Series since what? I think is it 1986 or something like that. So they got big time blue balls. They need a fucking World Series win badly, 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 badly. And this is the first year in a while where they've really like, they've been performing, man.
Yeah.
But there's kind of like people used to talk about the Atlanta sports curse, which I mean, the Braves won the World Series last year, so fuck all that bullshit. People like to talk about the Mets inevitable collapse, and I'm still waiting on it. So let's see what happens. I mean, listen, they were 10 and a half games ahead of us not too long ago. And tonight we had the chance. They're only one game ahead. Tonight we had the chance to tie them for first place. So I think it's just gonna be head to head, come down to the wire, and let's see who makes the right moves on the right night.
It's gonna be exciting. This postseason has a lot of potential because there's a lot of teams. Excuse me. There are a lot of good teams. There's the Mets, the Yankees, the Astros, Dodgers, Braves. There's a handful more that are also just like dark horses. I think the Guardians can make a run for all
Dude,
I
wait,
know.
is this their first year with the new name?
The Guardians, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I probably shouldn't get into that, my opinion on that whole thing. Because I heard that I said I shouldn't get into it, now I'm getting into it.
Yeah.
I heard that, I can't put myself in other people's shoes, so I can't say whether it should be deemed offensive or not just because I'm not in their shoes. But from what I've heard, like actual Indians had no issue with that. It was just kind of like like 2022 stay woke type bullshit, trying to be politically correct. But I heard that the actual tribes didn't have an issue with that. Now I could be totally wrong, so I don't want to speak for anybody else. But
Mhm.
I fucking love the Indians' old logo, man, and it's such a classic team. But it is at least cool that in their first year as a new team or new name, they're in first place. So maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, and they got a team. Like I think the weakest part of their team is their pitching. But other than that, they can hit. They can hit the ball. They have 5, 6 guys on that rotation where on any given night they can just go off, and multiple of them can go off. Ramirez, that kid Kwan is a beast. He started off the season. What was it? Uh, he reached on base in every single batting attempt his first 27 or 28 times. That's unheard of.
Yeah, so I was talking to someone about it. I was like, what's the issue with the team being called the Indians? And he's like, well, what if there was a team called the Jews? I was like, I was like, well, when you put it like that. So I personally thought the Redskins, okay, that I can understand. Like, okay, like, all right,
Yeah,
fine. But I didn't think the Indians was so bad. And with us, the Braves, that's also kind of like a tribal name, right? Like we got the chop and all that stuff. But I've heard the tribes are all cool with it. So yeah,
I think it's
it's
just the name having to do with a part of the world, like Indians, so Indian. You know,
right, right.
that
Yeah.
could be it. I could be completely off there, but I think that's
Yeah. And I mean everything I'm saying with the best intentions. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like if the people that have the right to be offended are offended, then by all means, right? But for people that have no business being offended, it's like shut the fuck up, you know?
exactly. That's hilarious. Well, Dan, it's been great. Thanks again for coming on. I'm pretty sure the people enjoyed it. Tell the people where they can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks, and then my podcast, Half the Battle, available everywhere podcasts are found. So that's pretty much it for right now. Truly appreciate you having me on, man. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely talk soon.
100%, 100%. And then I'll have all of Dan's socials in the bio. So go ahead. That's where you can find him. You see his YouTube page and you'll see his Twitter page. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining in. For those on the live stream, really appreciate it. I really appreciate the interaction that we've been getting week over week. And then for those watching in the future, like, comment, subscribe, share with your friend, your mom, whoever you want. And we'll see you next week. Peace.